Welcome to Wrapping Things Up, the podcast where we tie up the loose ends on all things packaging so you walk away with solutions. Coming up on today's episode. Hey guys, welcome to the Wrapping Things Up podcast. I'm your host, Meredith Denning, and we are so excited to be starting our first episode today. We wanted to start this podcast to truly bring industry expert advice to you guys. We understand and know that the packaging automation industry can be very complex and very scary information. And especially for a newbie like me, it can be really daunting and you don't even know where to start. So we want to bring our experts to you guys so that you can learn all the things in the packaging automation world. Today, I have Mr. Jordan Miller with me. He is our GM of customer care. Jordan, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
So good. Do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your role?
So most people in the industry that have interacted me through Viking at trade shows probably know me as the applications guy. That's kind of how I cut my teeth in this industry. That's how I started with Viking, was in applications engineering. As of late, very exciting opportunity came about, and I'm now the general manager of our customer care department.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. It's kind of fun. I got to spend approximately 5 years on the front end of the project, and now I'm all the way at the back end of the project, kind of watching the fruit of our labor get installed in the field. Yeah,
That's incredible.
Yeah.
How many years have you been in this industry total?
This will be my 5th year coming up here. Actually,
wow.
March is my 5th year.
Oh my gosh.
So here we are.
Wow. Happy anniversary.
Thanks.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
What are you most looking forward to in this new role?
Being able to see the fruits of all of our labor, right? Everything that I've done up until this point with Viking has been on paper. And it's really hard to kind of visualize what the finished product looks like. So now that we're in this role, I get to spend some time in the field to work with our service techs, and I get to see the end result, right?
Yeah. Are you so excited to be our first guest on our podcast?
I am. It's just crazy to me how far this has all come. I look back 20 years to when Viking Masek first became a thing, and to think that we're sitting here right now recording a podcast is just, it's crazy to me.
It is insane. It's crazy that it's the idea that we've been talking about for months and it's finally happening. I'm so excited for you to be here and for us to kind of talk about the misconceptions in the packaging industry. First things first, let's start off with the basics. What are some of the biggest misconceptions you hear from customers when it comes to the packaging automation world?
Sure. So I think we'll start with like the very basic form, right? So somebody that's coming to us that has never automated before, they're coming from hand packaging. They maybe have a little bit of automation, semi-automation, and they're moving into like that first deep dive into fully automating their process, right? One of the examples that's really relevant to us is coffee manufacturing. So a lot of coffee guys package by hand, right? So this is terrible radio, but
for our listeners out there, Jordan is holding up a...
Yeah, so this is a quad style bag. It has a tin tie up at the top. These are super popular. They've been super popular in supermarkets with coffee roasters for decades, right? So the tin tie having been the most basic form of a resealable feature where you put the coffee in. Once you open it up, then you can kind of roll it over and fold the tin ties over, right? Really great when you're doing it by hand, but when you automate, these are kind of hard to manipulate, right? So this is just an example of how you may want to go from something like that to maybe something along these lines, where still a pre-made pouch, still has the quad seal type features to it. For those of you listening, we call this a terminated gusset bag, so gives you a very similar look to what we talked about here before, but integrates the zipper a little bit shinier, gives you really, for all intents and purposes, the same shelf presence, and allows you to go faster, more efficient, and get more product out the door, right? Because that's what we're concerned about when we automate.
Right, but still allows for it to look incredible. It honestly, in comparison to those two that you have, it has a sleeker look to it.
Yeah.
So it still allows anyone to have a similar design if they want to, or even better than what they've been possibly doing.
Yeah, for sure. And what a lot of people find too that's really cool is like when you get into this arena, the opportunities for graphics and feel and look and all that stuff, it's quite a bit better than what we have here,
100%.
right? So it even opens up more opportunities to improve your shelf appearance and things like that.
Right. Why do you think these misconceptions exist? Do you think it has to do with misinformation, outdated tech, bad past experiences? Can you dive into
That's a good
what
question.
that may be?
I think generally speaking, the industry norm has been, let's just get a piece of equipment in this customer's door, right, and
Sure.
get them automated, right? But you have to kind of step back and ask yourself, is this customer really ready for that? Are they really prepared to take that next step into automation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where a consultative type approach comes in, right? It's putting yourself in their shoes, which is ultimately what we specialize here at Viking,
Right.
and is putting ourselves in the customer's shoes and being able to ask some of those questions and allow them to get those misconceptions out there, right? Clear them up. It's ultimately our job to provide them the ease of mind so that when they do take that leap into automation, it's not so scary. Because if I were packaging a product and I just went out and bought this super expensive shiny machine, I'd be scared too. So having those conversations early, having the experience to know the right questions to ask our customers when they are making that leap into automation helps eliminate those. And I think to answer your question, that's where a lot of those exist.
What are some of those questions that maybe we at Viking Masek ask our potential customers when they're looking into automation?
It seems really simple, but why are you automating, right? Like the question is, why are you here talking to us, right? It could be speed. We want to improve how fast we're running. It could be efficiency. We want to get more product out of the machine, not necessarily concerned with speed. It could be a combination of both of those things. You could have labor concerns. I mean, so that's the question that you want to kind of get out of the way first,
Right.
to really understand, why are we even here talking?
Right. So going further into that conversation or that topic, how does misinformation impact a company's ability or willingness to adopt automation?
It creates a lot of skeptics, right? Oftentimes, if there's misinformation, it's never put to bed, right? So people stew on that stuff for a while. And it's a good excuse to not have to move into something that's uncomfortable, right? So we oftentimes will use excuses to not automate or to not push ourselves into something that's different than what we're doing now. And like I said, when we were talking earlier about what do we do to kind of ease their minds and make that not so intimidating for them, they're oftentimes not asked that question, right?
Yeah.
So unless we're the ones kind of leading the way with those thought-provoking questions, making sure that they're able to air those misconceptions out to us so that ultimately the expectation is set and we're providing them with something they want, it's hard to get past that, right?
Can you give me some examples of the misinformation that companies might be hearing that would cause them to be fearful of introducing automation into their processes? Or
one of the things is that automation is complicated, right? It's difficult to wrap your heads around.
Right.
I mean, there are, even with my experience, there are some things that I even look at that I'm like, oh my gosh, that's super intimidating. But for the most part, that's kind of where we step in and we make it simple. We try to make it simple, right? To the best we can. So provide good training so that something that seems really big and complicated to a customer, to an operator, seems a lot smaller, right? It seems a lot more simple. You eliminate their need to understand details that aren't relevant to them, and you tell them, here's what's important, here's who you need, here's what they need to know, and here's what that's going to mean for your bottom line. Make it super simple for them. It becomes a lot less intimidating.
Yeah, that's great. Can you share a story of a customer who came in with the wrong assumptions but ended up with a successful automation solution?
That's a
Getting
really
into the
good one.
nitty gritty now.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the things that we have the unique advantage of here is that we can set up a lot of equipment and we can run it on our floor. We have really close access, or we're within close proximity to some of our OEMs that provide our fillers. So a lot of times customers will come to us and they'll have past experiences with different suppliers, different OEMs that said they could do something, but they never saw it before they bought it, right? And those are hard to overcome. So what better way to overcome that than to actually run it? So set up the whole stack up, put the filler out there, put the bagger out there, get their product, actually run it, and demonstrate that this is what we can actually do, right? So we oftentimes get that like with some of your more difficult products like dryer popcorn. Cheese is a big one here in Wisconsin. So cheese is notoriously difficult to package. There's a lot of misconceptions around that kind of stuff. And the easiest way for us to get beyond that is to do our due diligence, test it, and put those to bed.
What are some of the most common product types that make people hesitant to automate, like non-free flowing or lightweight products? You kind of just talked about cheese being a difficult one.
Yeah,
what makes
for sure.
cheese difficult and other products alike?
Yeah, that's a great question. So products that have a lot of, like, when you're trying to run at high speed, let's focus on high speed because that's where a lot of hesitancy comes in with automating or taking that next step into automation or improving speeds, is that they've tried to run it faster, but the product is too dusty. It's got too much particulate. In the case of cheese, like when you get into the harder, like the aged cheddars or the parms, they get real crumbly, right?
Right.
When you try to run those fast, that stuff is really uncontrollable. So it floats all over the place. It becomes difficult to make good pouches. And that's a lot of times where you're going to see customers come in with some hesitancy, right? And you go back to our previous point where we talk about testing and proving. That's a really good way to kind of mitigate some of those misconceptions or assumptions.
Yeah. Are there any other products similar in stature that are also kind of hard? Yeah,
for sure. One of them that I can think of off the top of my head that's the most recently relevant is like matcha powders. Like you talk about like the super greens drink mixes,
very
right?
fine powder.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, when you open it up at home and you tear the pouch open and it's like this little puff comes out of it, right? It's this, we deal with the same thing in packaging. So you have an open bag, you're trying to fill it really fast, you're trying to not spill a bunch of product, and it just becomes very difficult to do it. So it requires us to, again, go back to that consultative approach, figure out what are the different little customizations that we can make to allow this to run at your efficiencies, at your speeds, without wasting a ton of product. Yeah, I mean, it's stuff like that. It's any powders that are light, dusty, they're just very difficult.
Yeah. Well, even further to you saying how important it is to test and validate for our customers, how can you continue speaking into that? How important is testing and validation when helping customers overcome their automation concerns?
The biggest thing with testing and validation is expectations, right? There is a misconception, I think, just industry-wide that it's our job to, set expectations with our customers, but likewise, it's also a time for them to set expectations with us too, right? So during the testing and validation stage, it allows all of us to just kind of be open and honest with each other. When you're doing the testing and you have a customer standing right there in front of you, it's very hard to dispute the results of the testing, right? It's right before your eyes. So it's a good opportunity for us to ask questions, to test through what might be a misconception or a concern with packaging, and then through the entirety of the project, then set those expectations and manage to them, right? So that we can make sure that ultimately, in 6-8 months when your project shows up at your door, it meets your expectations and it meets ours too, right?
Yeah. Can you walk us through that specific process that we do here at Viking Masek when it comes to testing and validating for our customers?
Yeah, for sure. It's relatively custom. No two customers have the same product. So depending on your product type, depending on the concern that you have at hand, will kind of dictate what that process looked like. So I guess the very first step is to just figure out what is the risk, right? Our ultimate goal with testing is to mitigate the risk or try to ease your mind with whatever problem it is that you're trying to solve. So figure out what that end game is, how we're going to get there, and then let's do it. At no point, though, do we dispute the results. Do we try to hide anything? It's like it's got to be very open and honest. You have to be honest about what you're looking for. We have to be honest about what we're providing, and just kind of tailor it to whatever the solution is that we're trying to solve.
Okay, Jordan, in your expertise experience, what separates companies that succeed with automation from those who struggle in it?
What really separates someone that's going to succeed versus not is vulnerability, right? So just being open and honest about what it is that you struggle with, and open and honest about your knowledge with automation, right? We don't know what you don't know, right? Unless you tell us. Right. So it requires you to be open about that kind of stuff. Do you have a maintenance team that's adequately trained to run it? Do you have a package like the conversation we just had here earlier that's ready for automation, right? Or do you need help with designing that package? Or just, even if you don't know the answers or the questions that you need to ask, just tell us. I don't know what questions to ask. I don't even know where to start with this. Walk me through it. Hold my hand through this entire process.
Right.
Versus somebody that comes in and is very set in their way that they want to do things, right? They're not quite open to making maybe some changes like this, or taking recommendations on ways to improve automation or improve process or make things more simple. I think that really separates
just
those two.
allowing yourself to be open and honest to then build that trust with whoever you are looking
Yeah,
to.
for sure. Yeah. And I mean, it's our responsibility to build that trust.
Of course.
Too, right? I can't just expect somebody to walk in and be like, oh my God, we trust you to just take the
You would
reins
hope
with
so.
everything, right? But that's not the case. So, a lot of that is on us, but likewise, when it's reciprocated back, it just becomes easier. The dialogue flows better. Questions get asked easier. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. That's great. What is one lesson you wish more people knew before they started exploring automation solutions?
Apologies to our co-packagers out there, because I know this is a really tough thing for you guys to...
You guys rock. Don't get it twisted.
Yeah, to wrap your heads around. But setting the scope too broad, right? So when you come in and your scope is so broad, you want to package everything under the sun, you want to do it at all sorts of different speeds. Having those kind of expectations is tough. It's tough for us to manage, and it's tough for us to fulfill that request, because with automation, they're really good at doing a couple of things really well, but really fast and really efficient, right? They don't do a lot of things super fast and super efficient. So you can make a machine that can do just about everything, but it's not going to do any one of those things perfect, right? There's always going to be a little mistake, because you have to account for the adjustment. Likewise, on the other end of it, if you narrow up your scope a little bit, we really kind of dial in on a focus as to why we're automating and what pain points we need to eliminate. We can get you a process that will do that all day long.
Right. And maybe target those other pain points later.
Yeah, for sure.
Target the initial.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess all that boils down to just saying priority, right? Have a priority. We'll help you arrive at a priority, or if it's not us, figure out what that priority is and make sure that that's known at the onset of a project.
How is packaging automation evolving right now, and what should companies be thinking about as they plan for the future? Just tell us everything we need to do, Jordan.
My gosh, there's so many different advancements in technology right now. I guess the most relevant is becoming more automated, right? It's a silly answer to a question that is what's
pretty on the nose.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, but becoming more automated, eliminating interaction from operators to keep a process going is kind of the focus right now. It's how close can we get to pushing a button and just letting a machine run, right? To the untrained eye, it seems pretty easy, right? I mean, like we use iPhones all day. You can teach a 5-year-old how to use an iPhone, right? And the idea is like, how can we do that with packaging? How can we do that with automation? How can we do that with everything that we provide, right? From start to finish, a fully integrated solution that you walk up to and push a button is everybody's dream. So how do you do that? And I think that's kind of the direction that this industry is going right now, is making that as simple as possible for unskilled operators, right?
Right. Jordan, we've talked about a lot of different misconceptions today. Just to wrap things up real nicely, if I'm a customer looking at packaging automation, what would you tell me?
The first thing I'll start with, and it might seem obvious, but oftentimes isn't, is give yourself time. Before you think you need it, add another month to the equation, right? And give us some time to kind of walk through this process. The second part is find yourself a partner. Don't just go to somebody that is going to just be like, here's the piece of equipment you asked for, and just run with it. If you don't know, you don't know. And that's kind of where the consultative approach comes in. So whether it's us, whether it's somebody else in the industry, whether it's even packaging equipment, I guess it could be anything. Find yourself a partner that's going to ask you those questions, that's going to kind of walk you through mitigating some of those misconceptions that you may have, whether it be through testing, through experience, through whatever the case may be. Find yourself a partner.
Well, thank you so much, Jordan, for taking time out of your day. This has been an incredible episode for our first one ever.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys too. Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Wrapping Things Up. Make sure you follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Stay up to date by checking out Viking Masek on social media. Thanks for watching.